Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to HemingwayLand.com, your source, quality, affordable land, this time in the state of Nevada. Yes, people, we are back in the Silver State, more specifically in the town of Pahrump, with residential property I think you guys are really going to like. As you can see from the headline, it's a pre-staked, it's a partially fenced lot, it's got the power, it's got the underground utilities. Realistically, this property has access to all city utilities. More to the point, however, this is a residential lot just 40 minutes outside of the rapidly expanding Las Vegas metropolitan area, where, of course, home and property values are constantly on the rise, making this not only one of the few affordable residential options in Southern Nevada, but also an excellent investment property. So more about that and many other things to come in today's video. For now, however, let's get to the intro. This is reference number NYNV-5209, located in Nye County, Nevada. That's where Pahrump is. Specifically in a subdivision called the Golden Springs Ranch. This property does actually have a physical address of 1111 George Zine Street, and it is a scooch under 1 acre, 0.92 to be exact. And as you saw up top, this roughly 1 acre property is priced at $15,000. As with all of our listing pages, guys, come down here, click any one of these GPS coordinates, and it will bring the property up on the Google Maps. So, as always, guys, I do like to acquaint you with the general geography here. This property is located in Pahrump, down here in the southern portion of the state. If we zoom in on the map, you can see that the property sits roughly about 40 minutes west of the Las Vegas metropolitan area. Now, before I zoom in and talk a little bit more about Pahrump, I always like to talk at the outset of these videos about just how good of an investment property I think anything in Pahrump is. And, of course, I live in Las Vegas. I have lived here for a long time. I have, during the duration of my stay in Vegas, seen the town expand rapidly over the years. That, of course, that always happens whenever they build one of these casinos. And invariably, it employs about 10,000 people. And so a number of people will move to the valley for jobs. And that, of course, then requires more homes to be built, more apartment complexes, so on and so forth. In the last few years, however, aside from new casinos, we've gotten a football team. I don't know if you read about that in the news. We got about a football team, we got a hockey team, et cetera, et cetera. So the valley is expanding in a lot of ways, and of course, with that comes more influx of population, number one, and number two, of course, more homes being built. I think there's actually more people moving to Vegas right now. There's a greater demand for homes than developers are able to build at this point. So you're seeing home values really rise rapidly out here. And right now, the low end of buying a home in the Las Vegas Valley is like $400,000, $500,000 realistically. Of course, once you finish buying the house and outfitting, it's more like $600,000 by the time they hand the keys over to you. So point being, there are a lot of people who live in here who are looking for more affordable housing options. There are people who are moving here who are looking for more affordable housing options, and Pahrump tends to be a good alternative for that. Now, let's be clear about a couple things. There's about a 40-minute drive between Pahrump and Western Vegas over here, Western Vegas, which is called Summerlin. There are people who make that commute every day. They go back and forth to work on the Strip within the resort corridor. It's becoming more and more common as the years go on. I will tell you, Henderson over here, Henderson and Vegas are basically interchangeable at this point. The dividing line no longer exists. There was, however, a time where there was a great chasm of difference between these two towns. You left Vegas, you drove for 20 minutes, you hit Henderson. Hasn't been that way for a long time. But right now, that chasm of difference exists between Vegas Metro and Pahrump. Again, about a 40-minute drive. And every year, that gap gets narrowed a little bit more each year. And I think you're going to see that specifically over the next 10, 15 years. Particularly, the biggest impediment to that, the biggest impediment to development extending out this far is just this Spring Mountain range over here. That kind of prohibits a lot of building in this area. But I do think that within the next decade, decade and a half, you're going to see all this area. It's called Blue Diamond Road. You're going to see a lot of this area out here get built up. And I think you're going to see a lot of this area from Pahrump get extended down to here with housing. So point being, buying out here now, particularly at a price as affordable as $15,000 for a 1 acre lot, I think in 15 years, that price point is going to look quaint in this region. Anyway, before I zoom in on Pahrump, I do want to say, guys, a lot of people don't realize how many great things there are to do out here in Southern Nevada. We have all of these linked on the listing page, but I just want to quickly run through them. Aside from this little thing you might have heard of called the Las Vegas Strip, in which there are 7 bajillion things to do. There's also Red Rock Canyon, which is right between Vegas and Pahrump. There's Lake Mead, which is a little closer to Boulder City. There's Death Valley, which is just northwest of Pahrump, out closer to Beatty at the California border. There's Spring Mountain Ranch, which is along the Spring Mountains, which I just pointed out in the video, between Vegas and Pahrump. There's Mount Charleston and Lee Canyon, which are actually skiing regions. Yes, believe it or not, despite the fact we get 120 degrees of heat out here throughout most of the summer. Here at Mount Charleston, between this part of Pahrump and Northwest Vegas, there's Mount Charleston region up here, which offers a lot of skiing opportunities, I think throughout most of the year, certainly at least about 4 to 6 months of the year, something like that. Obviously, I'm not a skier, but anyway, Mount Charleston and Lee Canyon are out there. Valley of Fire is just north of Vegas along the I-15, closer to the Arizona border. This, of course, is much like Red Rock Canyon, a sight to see, a sight to behold. Gorgeous state park out there. And within the town of Pahrump, so, not only are all the cool things to do are in Vegas, there's a lot of good stuff going on in Pahrump. Of course, they've got casinos out here. Throw a rock in Nevada, you're going to hit a casino. You're going to hit some kind of gambling institution. Pahrump has their share of them. The Pahrump Nugget, of course, is a major one. The Pahrump Winery is also out here. Yes, Pahrump has a winery and a performance racing school where you can go out here and you can race sports cars around, so on and so forth. And, of course, there's also golf courses in Pahrump, such as the Mountain Falls Golf Club. Now, I'm going to pause the video for a moment, because I wanted to close all those windows. Okay, guys, so with all that said, a lot to do in Southern Nevada. You'd be surprised at exactly how many things, so on and so forth. Let's go over here now to the town of Pahrump, which I've only mentioned about 10,000 times so far in this video. If we zoom in here on the map and we go to satellite view, you can see this dense cluster of population density over here, which is the town of Pahrump, home to roughly 36,000 people. Of course, the 160, also known as Blue Diamond Road, is the major sort of arterial that cuts through this area. Do we have photos of the town of Pahrump? You bet we do, people. This is what it looks like out here. Of course, in Pahrump, particularly there along the 160, you have access to all the casinos. And, of course, any sort of major amenities you're going to need. Groceries and supplies can be found nearby. Emergency medical services, the hospital out here. Of course, Home Depot, Albertson Smiths, the nearby Walmart, CVS, which desperately needs a paint job. All of this can be found here in Pahrump. So you're not going to need to drive out of town for much unless you want to go into Vegas for something super special. But for the most part, anything that you need, particularly as you're going to be constructing whatever you're building on this property, are all sort of right around the corner, just along that main arterial. There's the Walmart. As always, guys, we love to shill for Walmart in these videos. Whatever the case, let's just kind of zoom in on the map here. So this 160 that I was just pointing out, this is where all of this sort of dense cluster of commercial development is. That's where you'll find all these stores, all these businesses, fast food restaurants, grocery stores, so on and so forth. If we go just west of that, however, this is where you will find the subject property. As we zoom in on the map, guys, you can see kind of a dense cluster of residential development in this area. We've sold a number of properties in this region before. I don't know that we've ever had anything that was this sort of this developed of a region. Whatever the case, the property sits right here along Georgine Street, just west of North Linda Street. This is the subject property right here. And if we actually, you can kind of zoom in on the map right here. You could actually go down here on Google Maps and you could be at property level. This is the subject property right here that we are looking at. And from this, of course, you can see what some of the nearby home sites are like. Of course, when we're selling property like this in a residential neighborhood, this is not the kind of thing where like, oh, can I go park my RV out there for 6 months? No. That's not what this is for. This is not for tiny homes. This is not for yurts. This is not for tents or for camping. This is for, hey, I'm looking to build a single-family residence of some sort. I'm looking to construct a home to live out of. That's what lots in this area are best used for. That's what we recommend, anybody who's purchasing this lot for. Point being with this, you can kind of look at some of the surrounding home sites and you can see what kind of development is acceptable out here, what some of the neighbors have done, what you can get away with doing, so on and so forth. In the absence of actually talking to the zoning authority, just sort of eyeballing the nearby home sites usually gives you some good insight into that. Whatever the case, as always, guys, of course, we have photos from the property. Hey, there we go. Photos of the property right here. So this is the intersection that I was just showing you of Linda and Georgine. As you can see, paved road access out here to the subject property. Paved roads all along in this region. Number one. Number two. Also, underground utilities here at the property boundary. You probably also saw that in the Google Maps. Point being, underground telecom, internet, Wi-Fi all throughout this area, servicing all these home sites. And there are power lines there along the southern boundary of the property. This right here is the northern boundary. I'll show you those in just a second. I don't know that there's much else to say about this. There's fencing along two boundaries of this property along the back end. Here we go. We're now along the southern property line here. This is the utility easement over here. You can see the power line that runs here along the southern end. Also some kind of power box right here. And yes, there you go. There's also one of these. I'm not entirely certain what these things are called, but that obviously indicates some sort of water septic service available within the region. Blah, blah, blah. Also, as you can kind of see from the photos, that there is fencing along the back end of the property. Let me go to the drone shots. Hang on a second. There we go. In the drone shots, you can see here fencing along the back end of the property, as well as along this end of the property. No fencing here, guys, but the property has, of course, been staked out. You can see it in some of the shots that the stakes exist out there. So it's not even necessarily the kind of thing that you need to hire a surveyor to come out and tell you where the property starts and ends. Your neighbors have pretty well dictated their boundaries, number one. And number two, there are property boundary markers out here. Actually, if I go back to, hang on a second, guys, hang on. If I go back to these shots, I think that's what this is in this property. I think that's what you see right here, property boundary marker. And that would jive with the fence ending right here. So anyway, point being, there are stakes out there. It gives you a sense of where the property ends at. So survey probably also not necessary for this property. The drone shots are the ones that are the most telltale, not only about the property itself and the region, but also the surrounding home sites. Again, they give you some good insight into what can be built, what can be developed on these plots of land out here, etc. Now, I will tell you guys, this is normally the part of the video where I get into talking about covenants and restrictions. As noted, this is part of a subdivision called the Golden Valley Ranch. Generally speaking, the covenants and restrictions that you find with subdivisions in Pahrump, the restrictions are written in such a way in which they basically conform to zoning. So you're not necessarily learning anything new by reading the covenants. We, of course, have them linked on the page, and I'll provide those links for you in just a second. But point being, as long as it jives with what is legal and permissible with Nye County zoning or with Pahrump city zoning, then you're going to be able to do it out here. So let me just kind of direct your attention up here within the table. So first off, down here, we have the covenants and restrictions. Again, they're linked right there. They're also linked up here. If you click on these, it will bring up this documentation. You can read through this, but again, there's nothing outlined here that's not basically outlined in Nevada environmental law or in Nye County zoning, okay? So the next thing to be aware of is how the property is actually zoned. This property, as we have it down here, is zoned Rural Estates Residential 1, RE1. We also have a link to documentation about that right here. You can click on that, and it'll bring up this. This is going to give you the most insight that you will find in a Nye County zoning ordinance. This is an excerpt from that. It's 2 pages, but I think it goes into some fairly good detail. That being said, I think eyeballing the local community kind of gives you more insight than that. If you have any additional questions about this sort of thing, if you read this over and there's still some things that you have questions about, I recommend calling Nye County or City of Pahrump directly. Of course, we have their contact information on the listing page down here under county contact information. This is where you can reach out and you can get into more specifics with them about that sort of thing, about how the lot can be, developed on, etc. That being said, as noted, guys, the home sites that you see out here are a fairly good indication. Again, it's residential property, so it's not the kind of thing where you're going to park an RV and live indiscriminately out of that sort of thing. This is not the normal kind of vacant land that we sell in the middle of nowhere. This is something where they don't want a half-built eyesore for 3 years. Your building permit is probably going to be good for 12 months. Your building permit will probably allow you to live out of some kind of temporary domicile while you're building the permanent dwelling. That's always allowed for. The point being, you shouldn't think of this as some kind of recreational property. This is purely a residential property, okay? Anyway, guys, with all that said, if this is a property that you are interested in purchasing, you should know, number one, that we did close on this through County Title, which means we got title insurance with the property, which means we will be providing a warranty deed, or what is the equivalent in the state of Nevada, which is a grant, bargain, and sale deed, etc. Whatever the case, you come up here, you click the Buy Now button, guys. It's going to take you to this secure checkout page where we're going to ask for a non-refundable, people, let me say it again, non-refundable earnest money deposit of $500. Do not put down the money if you are not serious about buying, number one. Number two, please be aware there is no financing offered on this, so you should not proceed with this transaction unless you have the whole $15,000. Whatever the case, guys, we ask for the $500 up front to prove that you're serious. Give us some information, legal name for deed, tax address, so on and so forth. Agree to the terms of service. Click next. On the very next page, you can enter credit or debit card information to place that non-refundable $500 earnest money deposit. Now, people, as always, when we get into properties in this price range, this $15,000 price range, we always recommend to our buyers, particularly if you're buying this lot, if this is something you're going to develop, if this is something you're going to build a house on, you want title insurance, you should close through a title company. The way that that process works, and we outline this on a page of our website called Buying From Us, how it works, buying from us. If you come down here, it kind of outlines this process, but basically you put down the $500. Within 24 hours, we get you a sale purchase agreement as well as a whole bunch of other documents. You sign the agreement, we sign it, we submit it to the title company, and they do the rest. Title companies normally hokey poke around for about 30 days. It takes them a while to get all the paperwork in order, but about 30 days later, they'll ask you for the remaining 14.5. They'll ask us to sign a new deed, and then the property will be conveyed to you. And the important thing to note here, guys, is that your funds, your money will not be dispersed to us until such a time as we have signed the deed, until such a time as we've conveyed the property to you. If you have any additional questions about this process, if you want to see a copy of one of our contracts, you come here, you can click our Title Escrow Frequently Asked Questions page. This is going to walk you guys through how this process works. Answers a lot of questions that we've gotten in the past from previous buyers. And additionally, you can see what one of these agreements that you'll be asked to sign looks like. As always, guys, we'd like to point out this is a pretty simple, pretty standard one page for signatures type of agreement. If you've got a lawyer in the family, you want him to look at it, that's fine with us. That being said, it's pretty self-explanatory. Whatever the case, we don't draft this until you give us money, and title company doesn't do anything until they have this document signed by both buyer and seller demonstrating intent. So that whole process begins with the $500 earnest money deposit. Blah, blah, blah. With all that said, guys, I hope you like this property as much as I do. It's really hard to find, residential property in Pahrump in an area this developed, in an area with this many amenities for the kinds of prices that we buy at, and hence for the kinds of prices that we offer. So I think this is a really good value of property just for the vacant land itself, and I think you'll be able to do a lot with it as far as building an SFR, a single-family residential home, basically just right outside the Las Vegas metro area. Something that I think is going to grow in value exponentially over the next decade or so. So anyway, with all that said, thanks for watching, everybody, and we will see you in the next video.